What's going on, guys? This is Sam, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content of my channel goes in and the foreseeable future. Okay, so I thought I'd dive into Michael Bendis' take on Spider-Man. Now, this is one of the best versions of Spider-Man, and this is what the MCU Spider-Man is based on. And so you see, back in the early 2000s, different comic book writers came together and created the Ultimate Universe, also known as Earth 1610. And this universe was created for more modern-day comic book readers. So while many things here are still the same, there are also many things here that are different. So the thing that really kicked off this universe was the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline, and God, it's just such a good storyline. Now, unfortunately, this universe was actually destroyed in the Secret Wars event, which kinda sucks, but luckily, we still have the Ultimate Spider-Man storyline comics. So I kind of have a deadline, and so I thought about a new video every Sunday and Saturday, and maybe we can reach my deadline, which is the release of Spider-Man PS4. So without further ado, let's begin. So in this universe, the tale's a bit different at the start. Osborn Industries, the company that belonged to Norman Osborn, was conducting experiments which led to experimenting on a spider, which was accidentally let free from its container. And this brings us to a young 15-year-old Peter Parker, a bookworm with his mind focused on other things, like his studies and girls such as Mary Jane. But while his life was a punching bag, it always took a toll on him. But there was someone who gave him hope and helped him through it, and this was his Uncle Ben. You see, his parents both died when he was young, and they left him in the care of his Aunt May and his Uncle Ben. And then, well, he looked after the boy like a father would. Peter was also close friends with the wealthiest kid at school, Harry Osborn, son to Norman Osborn. So that night after dinner, Harry came by the Parker pad as he called to learn about biology, and that's when Peter explained that his parents were supposedly killed in a plane crash, and that on that board in front of both Peter and Harry was a formula that his father came up with before he died. The next day, the whole school went on a field trip to Osborn Industries, with a fateful act happening. The weird spider from the start of our tale crawled out and bit Peter in the hand, and with that, he hit the ground, right away starting to feel weird. Now, this part of the story remains much of the same. A young boy begins to slowly discover that he has powers, everything from strength, speed, and agility. And while this is going on, Norman Osborn had Peter followed. He knew the spider that bit Peter, and he wanted to know what was happening. Was the boy going to live, or was he going to die? Now, as things progressed, both Peter and Osborn began to see the growth of his abilities. But the problem with this is that the growth of Peter's abilities also grew his ego, and eventually he grew cocky. You see, one of the kids picked on him, and he retaliated, and actually broke the kid's wrist, and the parents demanded that Uncle Ben and Aunt May pay the $2,500 hospital bill for their child, and this drove Peter further into his own head, and he thought, why shouldn't he use them, and why shouldn't he make money off them? So he decided to enroll in wrestling matches to win a little money, and of course he had to wear a mask, as they wouldn't let a 15-year-old kid enroll in these things. The story of Peter Parker kept progressing as he excelled at sports and continued to win these matches until eventually he made an actual Spider-Man suit. Back at Osborn Industries, Norman decided that if this kid could gain powers from his formula, then why couldn't he? So he and his friend Dr. Otto Octavius run various tests on Peter's blood, and they figured out the perfect formula that made Peter Parker into a superpowered individual. Except when they tried to test it on Norman Osborn, Dr. Octavius changed the formula, and something that he wanted to add, like he put something in there that he wanted to add to the formula, something that he wanted to alter, and it went wrong, and the entire lab was destroyed, and Norman Osborn went missing. Back with Peter, he continued to win each and every match as Spider-Man, and as it was all working out, Peter was walking home one night when a thug ran up on him after robbing a deli, and that was the moment that Peter could alter his entire history. This universe could go a completely different path. So what did the Peter Parker, the Ultimate Universe, do? He let the thug go. It's not his problem, as he told the deli owner. After that, Uncle Ben and Aunt May confronted him and asked him about his grades and why they were slipping, and an argument ensued, and Peter ran off into the night. He ended up at a party with girls coming on to him. Mary Jane was upset that she saw Peter with another girl. She didn't really know how to tell him that she had feelings for him, and seeing him with the other girl, well, she left the party. Peter chased after her, but as he got to the door, Uncle Ben was standing there because his 15-year-old nephew was now at a party, and he was there to bring him home. He took him outside to ask him why he was doing this. He's such a smart kid. Why waste away his potential on these things like parties? He told Peter various things about his father, things such as responsibility and what this means. He told Peter that his father believed that he was destined for great things. With all the great things that he was destined for, there must also come great responsibility. And this angered Peter, and he said, if his father knew so much, why did he leave? And he ran ran off into the night, a confused kid. But by the time he got home, it was too late. You see, Uncle Ben and Aunt May, they were playing cards when they heard a noise at the back of the house. Ben decided that he would go see what it was, and when he got there, he found a man with a gun pointed at him. The robber demanded money, and Ben laughed, telling him that the robber had more money than any of them, and that was it, a gunshot, and Uncle Ben was gone. But Peter wasn't about to lie around while the police failed to find the murderer, and he ran out into the night, changing into his costume. And many of you know where the story goes next. But Peter tracked the murderer down into a warehouse, and the police cornered it. He crawled in, and after pinning the man down, he realized that it was the same man that he failed to stop after the deli robbery. If he had stood up and done the right thing, at that moment this would never have happened. So he strung up the robber, refusing to kill him. Peter thought back to the full conversation that his Uncle Ben had with him about his father, and he remembered the words exactly. Great things are going to happen in your life, Peter, great things, and with that there will come great responsibility. He looked at his mask with tears in his eyes, telling himself, I do now. He went off to become the hero that he was meant to be, saving kids from burning buildings, beating up robbers and thugs, and stopping the crime of the city. And when he got home, he saw Mary Jane, and she told him that his aunt was staying at her house. He tried to talk to her, but he broke down crying. She held him while he cried it out. We then turn to J. Jonah Jameson, who isn't exactly taking the whole Spider-Man thing lightly, because he sees a guy running around in his underwear and assumes he had to be a menace. So he wants as much information as he can get on this Spider-Man. While this is happening, Peter's off inventing some new technology to go with his whole Spider-Man image. Basically, he created some web fluid using his father's formula for a molecular adhesive. It's sticky, and he can shoot it out of his wrist thanks to some web shooters. The next day at school, Harry finally returns to school after losing his father in a freak lab accident, and as Peter is checking on him, his new spider sense begins to go off, and then there's a loud boom! Fire and smoke begin to spew out of the school as Peter runs through the hallways trying to figure out what's going on. We see Harry, who seems to know exactly what's going on, as he's shouting, "Help me, he's here!" Using that as his entrance, Spider-Man arrives as he bolts into the building to see what exactly is going on. With the sprinklers above raining on his head, Spider-Man calls out to whoever did this, and a very large man appears in a torn cloak, and he stands right in front of him. As the hall monitor, I'm going to have to ask for your hall pass, and the man's eyes glow. He begins to hurl fireballs at Spider-Man. He bounces off the walls, altering our villain to the fact that he is a fire hazard, and he throws the mysterious villain into the lockers, but the villain gets up and he begins to swing, continuing his silence as Spider-Man continues his jokes until everything eventually goes crazy. The villain slams Spider-Man into a wall, launching him out of the school. He then continues to squeeze Spider-Man, keeping him from breathing, and he then lands in the park where he jumps again. As they're leaping through the air, his cloak begins to come off, and Spider-Man sees the big green goblin's face, which growls the word, Parker. Spider-Man looks at him. Who are you? Instead of responding, he throws Spider-Man down onto the streets below. He begins to panic. How can I survive this? Is this the end already? Until it dawns on him. His webbing. He thwips towards on one of the buildings, and then another building, begging for this to work. And then, like a giant trampoline, he propels himself back into the sky. He cheers out, excited that it actually worked, and then he thinks to himself, I wonder if my other idea will work too. And then he swiftly shoots his web and swings into action and landing square onto the goblin's back. As he gets a couple of shots in, the goblin reaches up, grabbing his head, and he throws it back onto the ground. He throws out two more thwips, but the goblin dodges it and attaches to the nearby helicopter while they both stand there staring at each other. But another problem presents itself as the goblin now sees the looky-loos who have joined the fight, and he begins to sprint on towards them. Spider-Man tries to attach his webbing to the goblin, but he has too much sheer strength, so he pulls Spider-Man right off the wall. He then throws his cloak into the air with Spider-Man still attached, and he leaps up to the level of the helicopters. His hands begin to burn brightly as he prepares to throw more fireballs at them. And as Spider-Man gets between the goblin and the helicopters, he shouts, "Stand down. I won't let you hurt these people." But that's the moment the officers in the helicopter take the shot. They shoot the goblin in the chest with bullets. Spider-Man calls out to them to stop shooting. As the goblin holds his chest all bloodied, he looks at Spider-Man. "Parker," he shouts as he leaps at Spider-Man, but Spider-Man jumps over his head, dodging him, and allowing the goblin to fall right into the bay, where he falls deeper and deeper into the water. He turns to the police, telling them that they have to save that guy if they can, but instead the police open fire on Spider-Man. He dodges and he rolls out of the way, getting out of sight, before changing back into Peter Parker. He then goes back to the school. He stumbles out of the school, claiming that he was under a bunch of chalkboard and rubble. Mary Jane rushes over to give him a huge hug. Harry decides to tell everyone who that was at that very moment, and he informs the group that it was his father, Norman Osborn. He did not die in that lab. He changed into that thing, and now he's after him to kill him. As the police bring Harry worry and for questioning, Peter can't help but wonder, what's to come next? This is the beginning of the life of Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe, and everything is going perfectly on track, isn't it? It's not like there's going to be more Goblin battles, clone fights, and symbiotes controlling him, or will they? Because while you may recognize some of these stories, they will be different from what you know, and at the end of the day, Peter Parker will earn his reward. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it if you do, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace!